So, Harish Patel, welcome. It's lovely to see you this evening.
It's good to be here.
So, Harish is the Director of Economic Security for Illinois. And for more than 3 years, he's been building a coalition across the state in support of guaranteed income and direct cash policies as one pillar towards making Illinois' economy the most equitable and inclusive in the country. Welcome. It's lovely to see you. And we're going to have Representative Witt join in just a moment. I can see that he's actually working on it, so it just might take an extra minute. The first question I had for you was actually just to hear a little bit more about what your long-term goals in Illinois are, and what are some of the recent wins that you guys have had in the guaranteed income front as you've been doing your work.
Yeah, thank you. And before I answer that question, I just want to take a moment to celebrate. 3-4 years ago when we were starting to do this work, there were very few people, very few institutions that you could turn to for advice and guidance. And now there is, I go to a meeting every day of some organization that is trying to move this forward. So it feels amazing to be part of a community that's doing that, and that's on all of us. So thank you for that work, and thank you for allowing me to share a little bit about what we're doing in Illinois. For us, Illinois, we, as you mentioned, we are trying to take Illinois, which has the 8th most regressive tax code in America, to hopefully, if our work is being done right, we would try to make it one of the most regressive tax code. And that's sort of our big long-term vision, is to eliminate poverty, inequality, so both people can live well, but also so our democracy can thrive. And we see that very interconnected. And in that, there are a lot of folks in our coalition in the state, both who work inside government, federal, state, county, city level, smaller towns, and also a lot of advocates who are on the outside. And we work in coordination, and that has shown quite a bit of impact, and hopefully many of those folks are on this call today. Illinois now has, the biggest county pilot at $42 million investment. The second one from the city of Chicago, which is $31.5 million pilot. So those are the two biggest ones. And then we also have a smaller city of Evanston doing very innovative work on a smaller pilot with $1 million. And I think all of those matter to me equally. And part of that is because it makes the government having to do this to show that smaller suburbs and bigger cities and bigger counties can all work on making this happen. So that's sort of the exciting part of what's happening in the state. And hopefully after, we can talk a little bit more about how we got here.
Fantastic. Awesome. Welcome, Representative Witt. It's lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So I'm going to do a little introduction, and then we actually, the next question is for you, so we'll be able to kind of dive right in. So you are a state representative in the state of Oregon, representing Oregon's 31st district, which for anybody who lives in the Pacific Northwest is the northwest kind of part of Portland going into the coastal range up on the kind of northern part of our state, yes, which is beautiful and wonderful. He has a deep background in labor relations, fighting first for those in the timber industry, then for the food and commercial workers space. Representative Witt believes economic development, adequate wages and income, and environmental stewardship can and should go hand in hand. So thinking about all of those, they don't have to be competing with each other. He's recently sponsored important state legislation that we're excited to hear a little more about. So thank you for joining us, Representative Witt.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me. I just think it's great to be able to share ideas with folks that have similar concerns as I do. So thank you very much. I truly appreciate the opportunity.
Excellent. Well, one thing that I wanted to dig into, obviously, is this piece of legislation. So Harish was just talking about some of the amazing guaranteed income pilots that have been passed in Illinois. One of those is for Cook County that is for up to 5,000 participants. And And for this most recent short legislative session in Oregon, you sponsored the bill HR 4079, which is called the Oregon Freedom Pilot Program, which that word freedom is a good one to get in there to try to bring together folks hopefully across the aisle. But this was a statewide, state-run guaranteed income pilot targeting around 2,000 transitioning foster youth and single moms here in Oregon. So I'd love to hear what inspired the writing of the legislation and kind of what happened to it.
Well, what inspired the legislation was truly a concern on my part and my staff's, who were intimately involved in this bill. I could not have put it forward without the assistance of my staff, who are deeply committed to trying to elevate folks who are facing socioeconomic challenges. But the inspiration among our office truly was an effort, a concern, a pathway to try to help the least among us, if you will. And we had focused on the impoverished. Much of our state has faced, not unlike other communities across our nation, but I think for a variety of factors, the level of homelessness and impoverished folks was exceedingly high in Oregon. And we wanted to take a look at ways that we could not only assist those people, but more importantly, basically, was a focus on trying to break the chains of generational poverty, so that poverty doesn't continually repeat itself generation after generation after generation. And the question then becomes, well, what avenue do we take to do that? And so we started looking at demographics, and I have to be perfectly candid with you. I find it very troubling to allow our pilot and what we were trying to put together to be driven by budgetary concerns. But that was a very real reality. And so we calculated that we would only have somewhere in the neighborhood of less than $30 million per year to put this project together. Those were our initial estimates. And so when we looked at the demographics of what group of impoverished folks might have the best chance of being lifted, if you will, with a payment of $750 per month, we narrowed that down to the two groups that you mentioned earlier, which were low-income pregnant women and foster youth who have, in essence, timed out of foster care. So they've reached age 18. At age 17 and 364 days, they had a roof over their head, and then they had a birthday, an 18th year birthday. And guess what they got for their birthday? They got put out on the street. And so these were the two groups that looked like they had the best chance of benefiting from the limited amount of funds that we were able to put forward. And so then we put the bill together and brought it to our legislative session. And this year, being an even-numbered year, we are in our short session, which is only 5 weeks. And our bill was literally tarred and feathered by some very powerful interests, businesses, anti-tax folks, kind of the whole spectrum of the right wing, because we had proposed to support the whole program with a 3% luxury tax. And the operative word here is luxury. The big lie that was perpetrated by the segment who is opposing the bill was that this was a general sales tax. And Oregon is presently one of the few remaining states in the nation that doesn't have a sales tax. And it has been likened repeatedly to the third rail of politics in our state to even propose a sales tax. But the obfuscation, the big lie, if you will, that was perpetrated is that this was going to be a sales tax of 3% across the board, leaving people with the impression that it was going to be a general sales tax rather than a sales tax, or rather a luxury tax on named luxury items. For instance, boats, very expensive cars, for those people who still wear furs, jewelry, planes, those things. Not the kinds of things that the average taxpayer or voter in the state of Oregon habitually purchases on a weekly basis. For instance, let me give you the realities of the bill, and we tried extremely hard to make sure that it truly was pegged at luxury purchases. It only applied to automobile purchases over $80,000.
Right.
Now, I don't think there are many Oregonians that go out and on a regular basis purchase an $80,000 automobile. I simply refuse to believe that, nor items of clothing that exceed $2,000 per item. But again, branded as a general sales tax, and we face the onslaught of mailings to individual households across the state to oppose the impending sales tax. There were pieces done in newspapers across the state, again, disinformation, suggesting that it was a general sales tax. And of course, not to forget all the folks on right-wing talk radio. Anyways, each of these forums solicited public input to the legislature to tell us, that this was intolerable in the state of Oregon, that there was no way, no how that a sales tax would ever be tolerated by the general public. It was a massive campaign, the likes of it was vicious. And truly right-wing structured, and the messaging was quite right-wing as well. Unfortunately, the big lie succeeded, and we were beaten and beaten back. I think fairly vociferously. I mean, there is no question that the public relations campaign against this bill worked so well that it scared the Democrat majority, and to the point that the Democrat majority wouldn't even hear the bill.
Right.
And
they killed this I was just going to say that's right. They killed it in committee so that it didn't actually even go up for a vote.
That's correct. And I think that there are a number of lessons to be learned here, and I take full blame for sponsoring a bill that proposed a luxury tax. I thought that was a realistic way, and I thought that I still believe that Oregonians are generous enough and care about their fellow neighbors who, are suffering tough times. I know as well as I know my own last name that that Oregonians would step up to the plate and help the impoverished. But again, it was the big lie, and the big lie was successful. And so next time around, it's going to require a different funding mechanism out of the gate. That's critical. And secondly, and I say this as a lifelong, loyal, proud Democrat, that we as Democrats need to take it upon ourselves and ask ourselves, what are our true values as a party? And we need to go back to our base, which was we took care of the middle class. We took care of working people. We took care of people who were facing serious challenges in their lives. And next time around, as Democrats, we need to, frankly, take a blood oath that we are going to stand up for the impoverished in our state, and we will find a way. We will find a way to break the chains of generational poverty.
Well, thank you so much, Representative. And, I think income movement, we found out about this just maybe I think a week before it had already been presented in session. We were able to rally a lot of people in Oregon, and I know some of them are actually on this call. I think we had over 600 letters written and sent to those committee members, specifically targeting them, saying, hey, take this on. And we also, of course, recognize that if you're getting it from both sides, it can feel too hot to handle. Like, oof, there's a lot of people for this. There's a lot of people against it. How do we is there any way to win when we actually take this on? So I think, it's a complex thing, but I love hearing more about what the opposition has been and kind of the learnings. And I'd love to get Harish in this conversation to talk a little bit about what's happening in Illinois. What for you, you've been doing this work for 3 years, Harish, and probably even longer than that, just working in the space around economic justice. What are some of the things you've been hitting up against in Illinois? Some of the kind of challenges or barriers you're hitting to getting statewide acceptance?
Yeah, I think as Rep. Witt, some of the similar challenges exist in Illinois where funding and how to pay for is going to be a problem everywhere.
Yeah.
And one of my anxiety is that once ARPA dollars dry out that have helped us get to a lot of pilots, because many of the city pilots are indirectly money coming down from federal to state governments, and then state governments passing it down to local governments that gave them a little buffer to launch out these pilots. It would be hard to sustain that unless we work alongside our inside and outside partners, tell the stories of people who are impacted, organize those folks, and do a lot of narrative change work that includes op-eds to a lot of the editors, to the ongoing stuff that Income Movement is so good at. I think it's going to take all the next couple of years, because when the pilots end in 1 year or 2 years, depending on, most of them are 2, some of them are 3 years, most of them are 1 to 2 years, we're going to come to a place where that will be too late to start organizing, right? And
That's
all
right.
of us know, just looking at what happened in Oregon, we know that we wouldn't propose something here unless we had a massive base that includes people who like to hear the moral argument, but also the people who like to hear the economic argument, how good this is for the local economy, right? Many mayors want state-funded things because when people have money, they spend it. There's a multiplier effect that includes their own localities getting taxes and small businesses being able to sell things. I think we need to repeat both the moral argument and the economic argument, and that's how at least I see some way forward. The other piece that I think is going to be really important is the bigger and more powerful we get, the more powerful the enemy is also going to feel, because many people probably don't like this, right? And so I think it's actually a win that Rep. Witt got such powerful opposition. That's a win. I know that Rep. Witt doesn't probably feel that, but to me, I'm like hearing the story. They spend millions of dollars to fight a bill They could have just spent that directly giving these young people an opportunity, unfortunately. So I feel like we need to prepare for that. And I think we've already done this where we expand the on-ramps. I'm feeling that there is, the on-ramps kind of start getting close. I mean, I can tell from the chats or, when I entered this work, it was robots are coming. What's the big crowd? Now we've already entered that race and gender and geography is playing a role. I think we need to keep complexifying this conversation, kind of keep complicating as much as possible and create more on-ramps for a much more diverse crowd to come on.
Right.
Everybody from the freedom-loving people to folks who are immigrant communities to folks who are coming back from jail system. I mean, there just has to be that we expand that tent for us to win.
That's right. Yeah, the intersectionality of the economic side of things with so much of the social justice work that is out there is just so critical. And it is always, since the pandemic and since kind of the rise of the child tax credit and even the stimulus checks, there's more and more people who are recognizing the power and value of cash, but there's still, I think probably every week we have conversations with folks, and you guys are probably the same, where they haven't thought about direct cash as an actual kind of monthly guaranteed income and really thought about the impact of that on the communities that they're working for and advocating for. And it's still just one of my favorite things when the light bulb starts going off when you're having a conversation and they're like, oh my gosh, wait, let me think about what this would really do. And for folks like in Oregon, the focus of transitioning foster youth and single moms, the pilots are helping us start to understand that. But even just the conversations and the coalition building is such a core piece to helping that statewide work happen. So I'm so glad you brought that up. And we're going to talk a little bit in just a few minutes with somebody with folks who are working on that narrative space, where that intersectionality is kind of core. So you're helping guide us to next conversations, which is fantastic. I'd love to hear, as we kind of wrap up, looking at this state level work that's happening, I'd love to understand what's next on your guys' agenda around guaranteed income work. Representative Witt, do you want to start?
Sure, be happy to. It may be a little self-centered, but it's absolutely critical if I'm going to continue this work. I think my next step has to be that I need to get reelected. So, I'm full speed ahead on that account right now. But I think, as I said at the outset, it's such an opportunity to be able to present here today, because this is an arena by which we can have people from across the country and who knows where it grows from there. But folks interested in similar pursuits working in coalition. And I think we can all learn from each other, shared experiences. Certainly none of us have the magic wand. I didn't. A luxury tax seemed like a fair way, and I still believe that it is fair, but politically not sustainable when it is so vulnerable to the big lie, to the attack, that it convinces people that it is a general sales tax, which it never was. But that level of susceptibility to the big lie tells me that I have to find a better way. There is just no question about it. I have to find a better way, and I believe that a general fund allocation is quite affordable. I mentioned before that we don't have a sales tax. And because our state is so reliant on the income tax, we have horrible times in this state on the economic downside. Right. And the reverse is also true, that we experience exceedingly good times on the upstroke in the economy. And we just received a 6% unexpected budget windfall here, simply through economic improvement and the fact that we're bringing a lot more in through our income tax. The $800 million that represents could have supported a lot more folks on a pilot program, other than just low-income pregnant women and foster youth. And so we need to be going after the golden ring the next time around.
That's awesome. I do want to say two things that came to mind as you were speaking, Representative. One, you don't have to come up with that legislation alone. We have amazing folks in the movement, in the community, who've been building legislation and really thinking across different mechanisms. Just like, Harish was saying, there's no doubt in this movement that understanding how to pay for it is like such a huge part of the hill we have to climb in getting statewide and federal legislation.
I'm experiencing more of the pandemic freeze once again.
Yeah, absolutely. How about for you, Harish? What's next on your plate in Illinois?
Yeah, I think for the next year or so, we're going to focus quite a bit on supporting the local pilots in their implementation. We want to make sure they're implemented well, that all the learnings that are coming out of those pilots are actually being shared widely, not only because they're important for the movement's work, but because there is a massive opportunity for what we learn about cash pilots really being utilized to expand other existing programs, right? There's no need for why SNAP can be expanded or TANF can be expanded or all the other federal state funded programs don't expand to a place where more and more freedom is given. And a lot of that should be coming from some of these cash pilots learning. There's no reason for why enrollment should be so complex. We're showing from the cash pilots, you can have a simpler multilingual place where people can come and do one form and it's simple and a lot of the information is already government backed. Like there's no need for them to have to go to multiple places. There could be a one-stop shop. So those are the kind of learnings that may not feel exciting to people, but I think that will make a lot of people's lives easy. And I feel like the cash crew and income movement folks, we should consider that a win. When somebody can buy diapers on SNAP, that's a win. When TANF is expanded down to so there are less and less rules, that's a win. When CTC and EITC is at 100% enrollment, that's a win for income movement, because those are all the different ways that we at least consider how people get money. And that's what it is about, people getting money, because that we know will reduce poverty and inequality. So for us, a lot of eyes on implementation, and then learnings being shared with city, county, state folks so they can do that. And the last thing is we're going to launch out a partnership where we are going to provide a small stipend to artists where they can tell the stories of people in our different pilots, because narrative change is really important to us. And so things like small community meetings and events like poetry events or a mural or a video stories collection all through next couple of years as a pilot's role has to be happening in parallel, so more and more folks see themselves in these pilots. And so those are the next stages of how our work will expand.
That's awesome. Well, and that's a beautiful segue into the next piece, which is talking about narrative work and pilots. And so thank you, Harish, for that very elegant transition. And also thank you to you and Representative Witt for joining us today. It's been fantastic to hear so much of the commonalities across states and two different places, but really appreciate the opportunity to hear more and to continue for us all to work together on these efforts.
And I'll be looking forward to lots of ideas and lots of input from the movement. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thanks, you guys.